Welcome to Living Inspired with Autism. I'm your host, Antoinette, and today we're talking about something that transformed my relationship with my son Max, the difference between responding and reacting as a parent. So let me paint a picture for you. It's one that you may recognize. It's Tuesday evening, supper time. Max is once again eating with his hands, and I am repeatedly reminding him to eat with his fork. Suddenly, Max proceeds to wipe his food into his newly washed hair. In that moment, what happens inside you as a parent? If you're anything like me, your heart rate jumps, your muscles tense, and a flood of emotions rushes in. Frustration, worry, maybe even anger. And before you know it, you're saying something like, "Don't do that. We've just bathed and washed your hair." That's a reaction, an automatic, unconscious response driven by your own emotional state rather than a conscious choice. Now imagine a different scenario. Same food covered hands, same wiping in the hair, same feelings, but this time you take a breath. You notice your own emotions without being controlled by them. You consider what your child might be feeling beneath the behavior, and you respond with, "It feels good to eat with your hands, doesn't it? It's frustrating when our brains won't do what we want it to do." That's a response, a thoughtful, intentional action that comes from choice rather than autopilot. The difference might seem subtle, but the impact on your child, your relationship, and your own well-being is profound. And for us autism parents, this distinction is essentially crucial because our children often push all our emotional buttons, sometimes several times before breakfast. Autism parenting can easily trap us in constant reaction mode. The unpredictability, the intensity of emotions, the public meltdowns, the judgment from others, all of these things create the perfect storm for reactive parenting. Now, I spent years living in this reactive state with Max. Every behavior became an emergency that needed immediate fixing. Every public outburst triggered my own embarrassment and fear. Every developmental delay activated my anxiety about the future. I wasn't parenting Max so much as I was reacting to a constant stream of triggers. And maybe you recognize the state too, that feeling of constantly putting out fires rather than truly connecting with your child. So what's the real cost of staying in this reactive mode? It's far more significant than we might realize. First, reactivity damages the very relationship that matters most, your connection with your child. When we're constantly reacting to the behaviors rather than responding to our kiddo behind those behaviors, our kid starts to feel unseen. They begin to believe that our love is conditional on them behaving well. The trust that forms the foundation of secure attachment gets eroded over time. I remember a moment with Max after a hellish day, with me reacting to everything. He actually cringed, putting his hands over his ears. His reaction revealed how my reactive parenting was affecting his sense of security in our relationship. Another major cost is how reactivity limits our creative problem-solving abilities. When we're in reaction mode, our brain's stress responses systems take over. Blood flows actually decreases to our prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brain that's responsible for creative thinking and planning and making decisions. Instead, we default to the rigid black and white thinking. We fall back on what we've always done, even when it clearly isn't working. Now, this explains why in the middle of a challenging situation with Max, I'd often find myself repeating the exact phrases my uncle used to do with me, despite having sworn I'd never parent that way. I mean, it's crazy. And then there's the sheer exhaustion of emotional whiplash. Reactive parenting means your emotional state is constantly at the mercy of your child's behavior. When they're doing well, you feel relief. When they're struggling, you plummet into stress or frustration. This emotional roller coaster is profoundly depleting over time. It's one of the main reasons so many autism parents experience burnout. I remember periods when I would just collapse into bed at night, utterly exhausted, and not from physical exertion, but from the emotional whiplash of a day spent reacting rather than responding. So, to break free from reactive parenting, we first need to identify our personal reaction patterns. Most of us fall into really predictable styles when triggered. There's the fixer, so jumping immediately to solve the problem, often without truly understanding what's happening for your child. And fixers might say something like, "Oh, stop crying, I'm here to help you figure it out," or "You don't need to be upset, let's just try and understand this instead." I'm definitely a natural fixer, and when Max struggles, my immediate impulse is to jump in with solutions and explaining rather than just sitting with him in his experience. And it took me a long time to recognize how this pattern often made things worse and not better. Then there's the warrior, catastrophizing what's happening and projecting far into the future. Warriors might think, if he can't handle this small change, how will he ever live independently? Or this behavior means she'll never be able to hold a job. The controller tries to manage every aspect of the situation, often becoming rigid and authoritarian when stressed. Controllers might insist, "We're going to sit here until you finish this." Or, "You need to learn that in this house we don't act that way." And then finally you get the avoider. It withdraws or distracts when emotions run high, sometimes physically removing themselves or changing the subject to escape uncomfortable feelings. Now, most of us have a primary reaction style, though we might shift between different patterns depending on the situation. And the important thing is to become aware of what your default mode is. These patterns don't emerge from nowhere. They're often shaped by our own childhood experiences. If you grew up with parents who fixed everything, you might have learned that uncomfortable emotions need immediate resolution. If your own emotions were dismissed or punished, you might struggle to stay present with your child's big feelings. And I realized my fixing tendency came directly from my childhood, where showing negative emotions was seen as a weakness. So I wasn't trying to shut down Max's feelings. I was unconsciously repeating what I'd been taught. Now, to identify your personal reaction triggers, try this simple exercise. Think about your last 3 challenging interactions with your child. For each one, note what emotion came up for you first. Was it anxiety, frustration, shame, anger? What physical sensations did you notice? Did you have a racing heart, a tight chest or throat, heat in your face? And what you did or said in response. Look for patterns across these interactions. Do certain behaviors trigger you more than others? I know for me it's the whining. Do public situations create stronger reactions than private ones? Does your reaction intensity correlate with how tired or stressed you already are? Understanding your patterns is the first step towards changing them. The key to moving from reaction to response lies in creating space between the stimulus and response, between what happens and what you do about it. Viktor Frankl He was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." For us, finding this space can seem impossible when challenges come like rapid fire, but even a fraction of a second can make the difference between a reaction that escalates a situation and a response that leads towards resolution. The mindful pause is the simplest, most powerful tool for creating this space. When you notice yourself being triggered, pause. Take one conscious breath. This tiny action interrupts the automatic reaction cycle and creates room for choice. I started practicing this when Max was about, I think, 6 years old, and it felt a bit awkward at first. He would do something challenging, and I just stand there, breathing. But over time, this became a pause. This pause became natural, and the space it created allowed me to parent from my values rather than my triggers. Physical techniques can also help interrupt reaction patterns. Changing your physical state immediately impacts your emotional state. So if you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, stand up. Take a step back, uncross your arms if they're crossed, cross or uncross your legs. These simple movements create a pattern interruption that can help shift you from reaction to response. Another thing is language shifts. They provide another powerful tool. When triggered, many of us fall into language patterns that escalate tension. You always blah, 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 blah. You never blah, 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 blah. Why can't you just blah, 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 blah? Simply changing your language can create breathing room. Try shifting from "you're not listening to me" to "I notice you're having a hard time feeling heard right now." Or from "stop doing that" to "I need a moment to think about how to help with this." These small shifts aren't just semantic, they fundamentally change the emotional dynamic between you and your child. Once you've created that crucial space between the stimulus and the response, you need a framework for making thoughtful decisions about how you're going to proceed. So here's a simple 3-question filter that you can use in any of the challenging situations. Question 1. What is my kiddo communicating through this behavior? Remember that behavior is communication itself. Your child's actions are telling you something about their internal experience, even if they can't articulate it directly. Are they overwhelmed? Are they seeking connection, attention? Are they trying to gain control in a world that just feels chaotic for them? Look beneath the behavior, and that helps you to respond to what they actually need. Question 2. What does my kiddo need from me right now? Sometimes they need firm boundaries. Other times they need comfort and connection. Often they need help naming and processing emotions that they don't understand. Your response should match their genuine need and not just to stop the behavior. Question 3. What would support our relationship in this moment? This question can help you prioritize the long-term goal, a secure, loving connection, over the short-term goal of the behavior management. So using these filters doesn't mean that you're always going to respond perfectly. It simply means that you're making conscious choices rather than reactive ones. Of course, some situations require immediate action because if your child's in danger or putting others at risk, you need to act quickly. But even in these moments, remembering these questions can help you respond from a centered place rather than from pure reaction. And this is purely just repetition, guys, to ask these questions over and over until they come automatically. The beauty of this framework is that it's consistently prioritizes your relationship with your child over behavior management. Now, this doesn't mean permissiveness or lack of boundaries, but rather it recognizes that genuine behavioral change happens within the context of a secure relationship, not in opposition to it. Okay, so for years, we had a problem with transitions between Max and myself. And every time we needed to leave the house or stop a preferred activity or switch tasks, we ended up in a power struggle. My reactive pattern was to give multiple warnings, then grow increasingly firm and eventually threatening as the transition time approached. 5 more minutes, okay, 3 more minutes, okay, 1 more minute. Max, I said it's time to go now. If you don't come right now, I'm leaving without you. Of course, I would never do that. But predictably, this approach led to meltdowns and whining, and with both of us feeling terrible afterwards. And I was just stuck in that reactive cycle that just wasn't working. But I kept using the same approach, hoping for different results. So after learning about responsive parenting, I completely changed my approach. Instead of a series of increasingly urgent time warnings, I started joining Max in his activity for a few minutes before doing the transitions. I'd get down on the floor, engage with what he was doing, and build a connection. Then I'd say, I see you're really enjoying building those blocks. It's almost time to leave. Let's find a good stopping point together. I also created a special transition object telling Max to go get his ball and put on his shoes. And this gave Max something to look forward to rather than something to dread. And the difference was remarkable because transitions that once took like 30 minutes of struggle now happened in like 5 to 10 minutes with minimal distress. And my response-based approach acknowledged his experience, it met his need for connection and predictability, and maintained our relationship through a potentially challenging moment. The long-term outcomes have been even more significant because Max has developed a better self-regulation skills by watching me model regulation. He's also more willing to communicate his needs because he trusts I listen rather than react. And most importantly, our relationship has deepened as he's learned that my love isn't conditional on perfect behavior. Moving from reaction to response isn't just about changing individual interactions. It's about building a whole family culture based on thoughtful responses rather than automatic reactions. One powerful way to do this is to teach these same skills to your kiddo at their developmental level. Children with autism can absolutely learn to identify their own reaction patterns and develop response strategies, though they may need a little bit more concrete tools and consistent support. Now for Max, we created a simple visual showing the differences between hot reactions and cool responses with pictures of what each looks like and what they feel like in his body. We practice identifying which in books, shows, real life situations, and I make sure to narrate my own process. So I'm feeling frustrated right now, so I'm taking a deep breath to help me respond instead of reacting. Creating family signals as well for I need space to respond can be a life-changing for autism families. We use this phrase, I just need a minute, as a code that everyone in the family respects. When anyone, child or adult, uses these words, it signals that they need a brief pause before continuing whatever they were doing. The simple practice has prevented countless escalations, especially in our home. Perhaps more importantly, we've learned how to repair after reactive moments because let's be honest, no matter how committed you are to responsive parenting, you will have reactive moments. We all do. The difference is not being perfect, but it's in how you handle those imperfect moments. Tomorrow is another day. When I catch myself reacting rather than responding, I will actually circle back with Max later and I'll say to him, I notice I got really frustrated during bath time and I raised my voice, and that was a reaction, not a response. Next time, I'll try to take a breath first. So these repair conversations are incredibly powerful. They model accountability, emotional honesty, and the ongoing work of relationships. They teach our kiddos that mistakes don't have to break the connection. They can actually strengthen it when they're handled with integrity. So as we wrap up today, I want to acknowledge that shifting from reactive to responsive parenting is challenging work, especially for autism parents who face unique stresses. This isn't about adding another item to your perfect parenting checklist or another reason for guilt when you fall short. It's about developing awareness of your patterns, creating that small space for choice, and gradually building a family culture that values thoughtful response over automatic reaction. Start with just one situation where you tend to react rather than respond. Practice creating that tiny space between the stimulus and response. Use the 3-question filter to guide your decisions, and be gentle with yourself because we are going to have reactive moments. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progression. We're moving gradually from autopilot parenting towards conscious, connected relationship with our extraordinary children. Thank you for joining me today on Living Life Inspired. So if this topic resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experiences with moving from what was once your reaction to your response. And you can reach out through our website or our community and drop a message on Instagram. Until next time, may you find those small spaces between stimulus and response where your best parenting lives.